Gore Vidal died on Tuesday from complications of pneumonia. He was 86. Gore was an American literary icon and a provocative public figure. He was often described as debonair, aristocratic, and irrepressible. Charles McGrath in the New York Times obituary wrote, Mr. Vidal was at the end of his life an Augustan figure who believed himself to be the last of a breed, and he was probably right. His outsized ego often trumped his elegant writing and razor-sharp wit. As he once said, there's no human problem which could not be solved if people would simply do as I advise. He was born on October 3rd, 1925, at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. He grew up in Washington, D.C. He joined the Navy at 17 and began his writing career at 19. When he was 23, he caused a stir with his novel The City and the Pillar. It explored what it meant to be gay. Ultimately, he wrote 25 novels, including Myra Breckinridge and Burr, 2 Broadway plays, more than 200 essays, and a memoir. Over the years, he engaged in a series of dramatic public feuds with a number of people, including Truman Capote, Norman Mailer, and William Buckley.
You must realize what some of the political issues are here, that many people in the United States happen to believe that the United States policy is wrong in Vietnam, and the Viet Cong are correct in wanting to organize their country in their own way politically. This happens to be pretty much the opinion of Western Europe and many other parts of the world. If it is a novelty in Chicago, that is too bad. But I assume that the point of the American democracy is you can express any point of view you want. Shut up a minute.
No, I won't. Some people were pro-Nazi, and the answer is that they were well treated by people who ostracized them, and I'm for ostracizing people who egg on other people to shoot American Marines and American soldiers. I know you don't care.
As far as I'm
you don't feel any sense
concerned,
of
the only sort of pro-crypto-Nazi I can think of is yourself. Failing that, I would only say that we can't have
now listen, you
the right of assembly.
Stop calling me a crypto-Nazi.
Let's stop calling names.
You in your goddamn face, and you'll stay plastered.
Gentlemen, let's...
Bill.
Let the author of Myra Breckinridge go back to his pornography and stop making any allusions of Nazism to somebody who was in the infantry in the last war.
You were not in the infantry, as a matter of fact. You didn't fight in the infantry. You were not. Now you're distorting your own military record.
Mr. Vidal,
what happened at Sharon?
Here he is indulging his irascible nature in an interview for 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace.
Mike, I am so in touch with reality, and you are so far off base, and I cannot begin to save your soul in the remaining seconds that are left to us. I am absolutely right in the general line that I have taken on what is wrong. This country was a success because of cheap labor and cheap energy. We're never going to have that again. We're going to have to contract. We don't know how to adjust to this. We're going to have less gross national product, not more. I mean, we're headed for a complete economic crack-up. There is no doubt about that, and I can quote you any number of bankers from one end of Zurich to Basel.
Are you planning to spend your last days with us here in the bunker, or are you simply going to abandon us to our fate?
You know, this idea that I'm some sort of expatriate, it makes, it's good publicity for those who would like to undermine my views. But I never have been an expatriate. I've been involved in elections and in the life of this country. Now, I think as the times get bad, and I see darkness all around me, and I see these disintegrating cities, and I watch these frightened people, they're getting scared, I would be very inclined then to return, because if there is a disaster, then you have a part to play. And I think that if the world is about to end, or at least the society as we have known it is cracking up, then it's best to end your days, as it were, on native ground.
Vidal denied having a softer side, stating, I'm exactly as I appear. There is no warm, lovable person inside. Beneath my cold exterior, once you break the ice, you find cold water. He did, however, once experience true love with a school friend named Jimmy Trimble, who died at Iwo Jima. He claimed never to have been in love again. For 50 years, he lived with his companion Howard Austin in Ravello, Italy, and then Los Angeles. In his later years, his belief in America's rapid decline deepened, but his lack of religious faith held steady. And he once said, because there is no cosmic point to the life that each of us perceives on this distant bit of dust at galaxy's edge, all the more reason for us to maintain in proper balance what we have here, because there is nothing else, no thing, this is it, and quite enough, all in all. Gore Vidal appeared on this program many times over the years. Here is a look at some of those conversations. Here is you with Tennessee Williams has his hand around your shoulder, and there is JFK. Tell me about the two of them.
Well, I got a call from Jackie. I was writing the movie of Suddenly Last Summer in Miami, and Jackie rang and said, "Can you come up for lunch to Palm Beach?" That Jack is, we're both dying to meet Tennessee Williams, so we came up, and this was about 1957, and Jack's already running for president, but Tennessee is very, very vague about who's who. He gives it, "Now, are you a senator or a governor? I can't get this very clear." And I said, I'm a senator. Mm. And he said, then they kept on chatting away, and then Jack pulled out some guns, and he was shooting at a target. Yeah. And said, "Would you like to take a shot?" In Palm Springs, right on that lawn where the alleged rape case was to take place.
Beach, not Palm Springs, Palm Beach.
Palm Beach. And so Jack was shooting away, not terribly effectively, and he gave the gun to Tennessee, who took it like that. He was not called Tennessee for nothing. He just took it like that and went 3 bullseyes. Jack said, "Well, that's very good." And Tennessee said, "Yes, and considering I was using my blind eye." Then as Jack was going in the house, Tennessee said, that's a very attractive boy. I said, "Tennessee, you cannot cruise the next president of the United States." "Oh," he said, "he's not going to be president. He's much too attractive for the American people." Later, I told Jack that Tennessee had found him attractive sexually, and Jack said, "That's very exciting."
Why did you stop this when you did? Why only age 39?
Well, it would get so long. I mean, I've had a long life. My first book was published when I was 19, 20. Yeah. So I've been around such a long time that by 39...
So this is like part 1. I mean, there'll be another
There might be a part 2, or there might not be a part 2, but practically everything that happens to you in life happens. It's really happened by 25.
Yeah, you say that. I mean, I want to come back to that point, but you say this is memoir and not a biography because?
Because it's the way the memory works. And if you break your leg, let's say when you're 10 years old and you're now 60 years old, and you start to remember the trauma of breaking your leg, this is this interesting thing from the brain people, that neurologists, that you don't remember the actual trauma. You remember the last time you remembered. And that time you were remembering the previous time you remembered, and previous. Well, each time it gets a bit altered. Hence a palimpsest. One thing is being written over another. Right. So ultimately your memory is just what you're left with, a whole series of layers. And as you investigate it, you see, well, some things are true and some things can't be true. Then I check myself against all these, everybody I know seems to have had a dozen biographies written about him, so I read about myself in these books. And that certainly spurs memory, as I have to give my side of the case.
But memoir rather than biography, because biography also has to be more factual, and in a memoir you've got to be more historical.
And you've got to get your facts straight and so on, and the dates. And I don't even bother with any of that. It's just if I recollect something like the story I just told you about Tennessee and the gun in Palm Beach, that's really what's left of it to me.
Some have said that you used this to get even with Truman Capote and with Aeneas Nin and with...
That was only one reviewer here in New York City, somebody who should be put out to pasture almost immediately as we speak.
Put out to pasture?
Well, he's old and
No, I know him. He's not that old. He's a nice man.
Oh, come on now. He must be about 80 now.
No, he's not 80.
Well, I know he gave Washington Irving a bad review, and that was 1810. No, he's absurd.
But I mean, did you use this? I mean, it's not beyond you to use these musings and memoirs to...
Well, it's not beyond anybody to use to make your case, perhaps. But to answer questions, if you have opposed, as I have, a political system as thoroughly and doggedly and continuously the financial system of the United States, the people who own the media are the people who own the country, and they don't like what you say. So they try to ignore you. If that doesn't work, they begin to demonize you or trivialize you.
And so you're saying that the New York Times wants to demonize you and trivialize you?
In principle. And for nearly, for 6 books, I was blacked out by the New York Times. This is after
Blacked
the
out
sit-in.
meaning they didn't review them
They
at
would
all?
not review anything in the Daily Times, nor did Time, nor did Newsweek. I was then driven, and it's sort of the center of this book, I was then driven. In order to make a living, since my books were not being reviewed, I went into television, the movies, and the theater.
You know, I never realized you wrote the screenplay for Ben-Hur. Not only Suddenly Last Summer, but Ben-Hur.
Yes, indeed, I did. But didn't get credit.
Because
and that was
Charlton Heston?
He had nothing to do with it. You see, this is what happens when you read this guy in the Times.
Right.
He says, I am angry at Charlton Heston.
Right.
Charlton Heston, to me, I mean, I start to smile when I talk about him. I mean, he is the greatest goose on earth.
The greatest goose?
Goose, yeah. I mean, I was denied credit on it. He had nothing to do with it. He never knew who wrote the scripts. The producer knew, Sam Zimbalist, and he died. So it was all up in the air, and William Wyler, a very nice guy, the director, wanted Christopher Fry, the other writer, and myself as co-writers. I only brought it up because it ended in great lawsuits and changed the rules of the Writers Guild of America. Heston then wrote about me in his diaries, so I make some fun of him.
What does he say about you?
Oh, I don't know. Well, he keeps redoing it, so I don't know what it is lately.
He does have new memoirs out. I want to show you two people. One, this is Jimmy Trimble, as he looked the last time I saw him when he was 17 in 1942. What I was not, he was, and the other way around. Just reflect on this, because this is at the heart of this book.
Well, we grew up together, and I was 1 week older than he, and we went to school together. He was the greatest athlete in the school, and I was already a writer. And the one thing we had in common was that we were already, as schoolboys, we were what we were going to be all our lives. I was going to be a writer. By the time he was 17 and graduated from St. Albans, he was offered a contract with the New York Giants as a pitcher, something that's never happened to a 17-year-old before. Yeah. And by 19, my first book was published. We had that in common, and it was a kind of wholeness. We were like two parts of the same person. And then we were separated by time and war. At 17, I enlisted in the infantry and then got sent out to the Aleutian Islands, by which time I was the first mate of a ship. I'd moved over to the Transportation Corps. He enlisted in the Marines, and 50 years ago, last March, he was killed at Iwo Jima. So as I said to one interviewer once, this was sort of the unfinished business of my life. Not that there was anything that was of a prurient nature. It was two halves of the same whole, which would have adjusted, as I say in the book. I said I had no idea of growing old with him. I just wanted to go on growing up with him. And he had a girlfriend, and he was all set to get married as soon as he got back.
But how were you the mirror images of each other?
That each saw in the other what he was not, and that there was a sort of balance between the two. In the Symposium, Plato writes about it, and he said that he has Aristophanes say it at this dinner party, and Aristophanes tells the story about originally there were three sexes. There was a hermaphrodite, male, female. Round, must have been rather unpleasant looking, these three. And they angered Zeus the god, so he split the hermaphrodite in half, which means that every boy looking for a girl and every girl looking for a boy, they're actually looking for the completion of themselves, which had been bisected rather, by Zeus. Ditto the case of the male, ditto the case of the female. Each looks for the complementary half to a whole. I don't think anybody does it consciously. I certainly didn't. And I don't think if you search for it, you would find it. Either something like that happens in life, and it can be quite unexpected, with the most unexpected person. Then there it is. And that, to me, as I was writing this memoir, it became clearer and clearer to me that this was the story I was telling, 50 years dead, and, you know, we writers have great vanity, from the great Shakespeare down to me, and Shakespeare in the sonnets was making it very, very clear that he could make someone immortal that he cared about. Well, I don't know if I can make anyone immortal, but I can bring him back to life, which I did. I had researchers out there. I was getting reports from Marines who had served with him in the Pacific. talked to his mother, talked to the girlfriend, and suddenly I've brought a ghost back. And it was rather nice. It was, shall we call it exorcism? I don't know, but it was unexpected. So that is what palimpsesting led me to, and rather a surprise.
You have never met anyone who made you feel the same way, that made you reach this wholeness?
No, because, and I don't think I, like so many people, was always in youth. I was into lust. I was not into real entanglements.
And in fact, you say that's the best part of it.
Well, lust and the idle encounter was exactly what I liked. Jack Kennedy liked, Tennessee Williams, and Marlon Brando.
Yeah,
I mention all four of us because we're more or less contemporaries, and we were both promiscuous to a degree that is not possible in the age of AIDS, but we certainly were. It may have been the tension of the war, I don't know what. So neither one of us was looking for completeness. We were looking for the excitement and the adventure. The example of my own family put me totally against marriage. My mother was an alcoholic, and I couldn't wait to get out of her company. And except for one episode where I nearly got married, I was never again tempted. So that ruled that out.
What was that episode?
Well, that was just before I was going overseas, and we all thought we were going to be killed. And indeed, in my case, Jimmy was killed. And there was suddenly a great urge, which I suppose is biological, to procreate before you leave. But a lot of things went wrong, and that did not take place.
I mean, you take note of homosexual and heterosexual.
Well, there.
More of the former than the latter, but relationships with women as lovers?
Well, I don't make any labels for anybody. There's no such thing as a homosexual person, no such thing as a heterosexual person. Technically, I suppose we're all bisexual. But these are adjectives, not nouns. They describe actions. Yes, there's a homosexual action, and some people like to commit them all the time. There are heterosexual actions, and people sometimes are exclusively that, sometimes not.
What you have achieved as a literary figure, as a writer, is primarily the force of your intellect or the force of your energy?
Well, energy without which there is nothing. So I am genetically very sound. I come from an energetic family. I came from a family that refused ever to, the main line of it, at least those that I admired in the family, to accept defeat. My grandfather was blind at the age of 10, and he had vowed he was going to go to the Senate, which was an important place in those days. And he got there at the age of 38, not being able to read.
And you would read to him?
And I read to him as a kid and was brought up in his house. And I never, ever felt sorry for myself because I would think of him. You know, I had two eyes at least. So I had these examples in front of me of people who had overcome quite a lot. So I was, that combined with energy will get you quite a ways. Beyond that, you have to deal sort of with what most excites you. And I was working, they did a retrospective yesterday at the Museum of Broadcasting and Television, whatever it's called. And I was watching some of my old television plays, yeah. And what are they called? One is called A Sense of Justice. Nobody would call anything that today. Who has a sense of justice today? Certainly not the Supreme Court. Another one was called Honor, Civil War story. Who on earth would go on about honor? And here I was in my late 20s, early 30s, obsessed with these themes. Justice, honor. What is the state? What rights has the state against the individual? What rights does the individual have against the state? And I don't know, maybe it's being brought up in the house of a populist politician, but I knew where I stood very early, and I knew what I cared about, and I knew that no one was going to shut me up, not even the New York Times.
How far along are you to achieving what you wanted to do and creating what you wanted to create and doing what you wanted to do in this life at 70?
Well, I suppose I would like earlier to have been president, but now I see that I know too much about it now. It's a pointless job. We talk about the coming election. Nobody basically cares about it. because everybody knows the country isn't, nothing works. The system doesn't work, so the individual doesn't matter. Had I been president about the time one of my numerous political cousins, Jimmy Carter, was the president, something might have been done in the world. But by then, everything was blocked, blocked. So that ambition sputtered out long ago. I thought it was better to reflect upon the presidency in books like Empire and Hollywood and Burr, Lincoln. So as for the work itself, you do your best.
What are you proudest of? The novels, the essays, the what?
I don't know that I'm really proud of anything.
You don't know that you're really proud of anything? I mean,
well, no, you never do it as well as you ought to do it. I think that in my lifetime, I have made people look at sex and at the American Republic in new ways that they would not have looked at these two great subjects had I not been around. I have changed, every now and then, I have changed the discourse. I said it, just one silly example, 1968, the conversations with William Buckley on television at the conventions. The very first debate we had, 1968, is a Republican convention, Miami Beach. I said there is no difference between the two parties. Each is paid by the same people, paid for. Explosion, how can you say such a thing? Hysteria on every side.
On every side, or you mean by Bill?
Oh, Bill. Hysteria.
Oh,
hysteria is at home, always there, but I'm speaking more of what goes on.
You mean it ricocheted off the country, people saying,
who is this? There's all the difference in the world.
Who is this writer saying that American presidents are for sale and owned by corporate America?
Yeah, and they said, you know, the party of labor, the Democrats, the party of the rich, the Republicans. There is not one single major politician today who does not repeat what I said in '68. But there is fundamentally no difference between the two parties.
Did you like Aaron Burr the most? Was he your favorite of all the people that sort of came together in one way or another to?
No, he's the only one that I might have wanted to have dinner with.
Why is that?
Because he was brilliant. And
more brilliant than Jefferson? More brilliant than Hamilton?
In his way.
Brilliant than Franklin?
Not than Franklin. But
not than Franklin.
Yeah,
okay.
but certainly than the other politicians. He was totally without... in a way, he couldn't tell lies. He understood why people did things and their motivations. And he expressed himself beautifully. And he's the one you go to if you want to find out really what happened in the election of 1800 when Jefferson came to power, and he arranged it for him. That's where he was interesting.
If the duel had never taken place, would America have been different?
No.
If Hamilton had lived?
Oh, Hamilton was totally finished by the time of the duel. He was totally discredited. He tried to overthrow Adams, who was the head of the Republican Party, as it was then called. And he wanted to be president, but he never could be. And he was looking for a throne in Mexico, like Burr. They wanted to... Napoleon Bonaparte had absolutely unhinged all these guys. They're all about 5'4", just like Napoleon. And these two little guys who are done in politically in America, Vice President Burr is no longer Vice President.
Right.
Secretary of the Treasury Hamilton is no longer in office. He's tried to wreck his own party and his own president. And each of them is talking to Mexican and Spanish officials about the chances of having a coup going down there and taking over Mexico.
Yeah.
And they were quite serious in their planning. It's just everything went wrong, of course. We have a fascinating history. We have one that was an inspiration to the whole world for a century or two. We're now regarded as a sort of joke nation that has turned violent, maybe gone crazy, and we're held in low regard around the world.
Do you think that a different leadership can change that?
In fatalistic moments, and these are fatalistic times, I don't think we can change now. I think we are committed to...
You think we're on a steep slide into what?
Well, despotism. Despotism, a police state, a militarized economy, armies marching into other countries because the president has an intuition that a terrorist might be living on that country's Broadway. Yes. There's going to be more and more of this. and no one will do anything to stop you.
What do you love about the country?
Well, it's in the book.
Its founding fathers?
Well, I like them more than the...
Present leadership. All right, but what is in the book meaning what? Tell me what it is.
Well, there was the sense, well...
I'm talking about today, America, 2003.
Well, I can't see it. I only filter it through the past. I mean, to me, the past
okay,
is
but that
as living as today. If I go around and see the general mess of the environment, I mean, you know, ride what hobby horse you want to ride. There are so many things wrong. We are so busy propagandizing ourselves and trying to conquer the rest of the world and get all that oil and so forth and so on. I believe it's every day a bridge falls down in the United States. The country is in great disrepair. The schools are a scandal. And poverty is at large. We're the richest nation in the world, theoretically, but all the wealth seems to be over here.
But what would you do different in the life that you have lived?
I can't think of anything. I have done pretty much what I wanted to do. I'll give a little advice out there for those who worry about their place in the world. Always remember that it is of no consequence to you what other people think of you. What matters is what you think of them. That is how you live your life.
Gore Vidal, dead at 86.